She wore nothing but a tiara and a smile. That single photograph, taken by her own husband while she sat in a bathtub, became the most famous image ever made of Princess Margaret. The Victorian masterpiece of cushion-cut diamonds, old-cut stones, silver gold, and scrolling floral motifs. With a tiny screwdriver, it could be taken apart and rebuilt as a diamond necklace or as 11 separate brooches. After Margaret died, it was sold at Christie's for £926,400 to an anonymous private Asian buyer. That was in 2006. From that moment, the Poltimore Tiara vanished from public view. But the tiara was only one piece of a much larger mystery. Princess Margaret left behind more than 800 treasures. Pearl necklaces from Queen Mary, turquoise jewels linked to the Queen Mother, Faberge clocks, antique brooches, a ruby engagement ring designed by the man who once loved her. After her death, some treasures were sold to strangers. Some were kept by her children. Some slipped into the grey space between private inheritance and crown property, where no one at the palace has ever offered a clear answer. This is the story of what really happened to Princess Margaret's jewels. The auction that broke her former husband's heart, the diamonds her daughter still wears in silence, and the granddaughter who never met her, but now carries her ring to royal occasions where she believes Margaret would have wanted to be. Princess Margaret, Countess of Snowdon, died on February the 9th, 2002. She was 71 years old. For decades, she had been one of the most glamorous women in Britain. She was the Queen's younger sister, the princess who smoked through long cigarette holders, danced until 3 in the morning, and fell in love with people the palace did not want her to love. She left 2 children from her marriage to photographer Antony Armstrong Jones. Her son was David Armstrong Jones, once Viscount Linley, later the 2nd Earl of Snowdon. Her daughter was Lady Sarah Chatto, quiet, artistic, private, and almost invisible beside the noise of royal life. Margaret also left an extraordinary jewelry collection, built through state banquets, royal tours, birthdays, family gifts, and presents from powerful people across the world. Then came the number that changed everything. Unlike the sovereign, whose possessions can pass free of inheritance tax, Margaret's personal estate was subject to the standard 40% levy. Her children faced a bill running into millions of pounds. They had only 2 choices: pay from their own pockets or sell. They chose to sell. That decision divided the family. Lord Snowdon, Margaret's former husband and the father of David and Sarah, reportedly wrote to his children and begged them to stop the auction. To him, selling Margaret's belongings felt like a betrayal of her memory. But the tax bill was real, and in the end, Christie's received 800 items from Kensington Palace, Margaret's London home for more than 4 decades. The sale took place at Christie's, King Street in London on June 13th and June the 14th, 2006. Day 1 was reserved for jewellery and Faberge, with 192 lots. Day 2 covered furniture, silver, and works of art, with about 600 more items. Christie's estimated the collection at around £2 million. That estimate was destroyed almost as soon as bidding began. Before the auction pieces had been exhibited around the world, turning Margaret's treasures into a spectacle before the first hammer even fell. When the hammer fell on day 1, the results were staggering. The jewelry alone brought nearly £10 million, 5 times the estimate for the entire sale. A Faberge clock in translucent mauve enamel, a gift from Queen Mary, sold for more than £1 million to an anonymous buyer. A tiny ruby and pearl necklace, worn by Margaret when she was 2 years old in a photograph, brought £28,000, more than 20 times its estimate. A Victorian bee brooch was sold with Margaret's own handwritten note, saying it was almost the first bit of jewelry given to her mother and then given to her on February 10, 1945. That brooch sold for £34,000. 3 of her umbrellas from the 1960s sold for more than £2,000. Even 3 bottles of Kensington Palace white wine from 1976 fetched nearly £5,000. The buyers were not only buying objects, they were buying closeness to a woman who had lived in public yet kept her inner world private. One of the most emotional lots was a 5-row Art Deco pearl and diamond necklace. Queen Mary had given it to Margaret for her 18th birthday in 1948. Cecil Beaton photographed the young princess wearing it for her 19th, 20th, and 21st birthday portraits. It was 39 centimeters long, with graduated pearls and a diamond-mounted platinum clasp. It sold for more than £500,000. Somewhere in the world, a stranger now owns the necklace that framed Margaret's face in the carefree years, before disappointment hardened around her. But the jewel that made headlines across the world was the Poltimore Tiara. To understand why it mattered, you have to understand what it was not. It was not a crown heirloom. It was not borrowed from the Queen. It was not passed down from Queen Mary. It was not chosen by palace tradition. Princess Margaret bought it herself at auction in 1959 for £5,500. That act alone was a statement. She had access to the Queen's collection and could have borrowed one of many royal tiaras. Instead, she chose her own. In a life where so many choices were taken from her, the Poltimore was a jewel she claimed for herself. The tiara had been made by Gerard around 1870 for Florence. Lady Poltimore, wife of the second Baron Poltimore, who served as treasurer to Queen Victoria's household. It was a masterwork of Victorian craftsmanship, with cushion-shaped and old-cut diamond clusters alternating with diamond-set scroll motifs, all mounted in silver and gold. The floral design reflected the Victorian love of nature, but the engineering was just as striking as the beauty. A brown silk ribbon was laced inside the framework, so that only the diamonds rose above the hairline. That gave the tiara a dramatic height, and inside its fitted blue leather case was the small screwdriver that revealed its secret. The tiara could be dismantled and reassembled as a fringed necklace or as 11 separate brooches. Margaret first wore it as a necklace at the Royal Opera House, before the public even knew she was engaged. Then came May 6, 1960. She wore the full Poltimore tiara to Westminster Abbey for her wedding to Antony Armstrong Jones. It was the first royal wedding ever broadcast on television. Around 300 million viewers watched her arrive in a horse-drawn carriage. The Poltimore rose above her Norman Hartnell gown. Behind her flowed a cathedral-length veil of silk and tulle. The tiara added height to her small frame and gave the image a sense of command. She did not look like a princess wearing something borrowed from a vault. She looked like a woman wearing her own crown. From that day forward, the Poltimore became Margaret's signature. She wore it to state banquets in Japan, Sweden, Spain, Oman, and the Philippines. She wore it to Silver Jubilee galas and to the state opening of Parliament. She wore it as brooches pinned to evening gowns and as a necklace over bare shoulders. Then sometime in the early 1960s, Antony photographed her in a bathtub wearing only the tiara. The image was intimate, rebellious, elegant and dangerous. It captured Margaret perfectly, royal and defiant, vulnerable and untouchable, bound by the crown, yet reaching for pleasure on her own terms. At Christie's in 2006, the Poltimore tiara was estimated at £150,000 to £200,000. It sold for £900,000, £26,000, nearly 5 times the high estimate. Then it disappeared. The total for the 2-day sale reached £13.6 million. Yet the auction only answered part of the question. The deeper mystery was what never reached the catalogue at all. The greatest absence was the Persian Turquoise Parure. It was a full set of turquoise and diamond jewels, including a tiara necklace, earrings, and brooch. Gerard made it around 1900. King George V gave it to Elizabeth Bowes. Lion, as a wedding gift in 1923 when she married his son, the future King George VI. Turquoise has long been associated with love, and the design carried lamps of love, triumphal laurels, and lovers' knots all mounted in gold with platinum settings. The Queen Mother wore the set to state banquets, royal weddings, and coronation balls through the 1920s and 1930s. Later, she reportedly gave the principal pieces to Margaret for her 21st birthday. Margaret wore the turquoise tiara for decades. She wore it during the Jamaican independence celebrations in 1962. She wore it during the Belgian state visit in 1963. She wore it to the Royal Film Performance in 1967. She wore it to the Royal Danish Ballet Gala in 1968. But after Margaret died, the Persian Turquoise Parure did not appear at Christie's. Its whereabouts remain uncertain. Some believe the Earl of Snowdon retained it. Others believe it may never have been Margaret's private property at all. Perhaps it was only a crown loan. Perhaps it returned to the royal collection. The uncertainty exposes the hidden fault line under every royal jewelry story. Is a jewel personal property, or does it belong to the institution? In the British royal world, that answer is often left unclear. The uncertainty protects the palace. If ownership is never explained, no outsider can demand a final answer. The turquoise tiara has not been seen in public since Margaret's death, and no member of the royal family has explained its fate. But not all unsold jewels became mysteries. Lady Sarah Chatto kept some of the most meaningful pieces from her mother's collection. Among them were 3 antique diamond flower brooches. They had been a wedding gift from Lord Snowdon to Margaret in 1960. In 1994, when Sarah prepared to marry Daniel Chatto, fashion designer Jasper Conran noticed the brooches in Margaret's jewelry box and suggested transforming them into a tiara. The London jeweller Wartsky created a frame to hold the 3 flowers. On her wedding day, Sarah wore the Snowdon floral tiara, with fresh greenery making the diamonds look almost alive. It was made from the flowers her father had given her mother on the day they promised to love each other. Sarah also inherited the Greville pearl earrings, a diamond and pearl necklace from Queen Mary, and diamond star earrings from Margaret's collection. She wears them sparingly, but always at important moments. She wore Margaret's diamonds at Margaret's funeral. She wore them at Queen Elizabeth's funeral in 2022. She wore them at King Charles's coronation in 2023. In those photographs, Margaret's jewels do not shout. They glint quietly at her daughter's shoulder as if refusing to vanish completely. For years, one question haunted royal jewel watchers. What happened to Princess Margaret's engagement ring? It was not in the Christie's auction. It was not seen on any public hand. The ring had been designed by Antony Armstrong Jones himself. At its center was a ruby, surrounded by a halo of round-cut diamonds arranged like a rosebud. The design honored Margaret's middle name, Rose. It was small, simple, romantic, and deeply personal. Nothing like the grand sapphires and emeralds of other royal engagements. Then, in November 2025, the answer finally came from an unexpected voice. Lady Margarita Armstrong Jones, Margaret's only granddaughter, revealed in an interview with The Telegraph that the ring had remained in the family all along. Her father, David Armstrong Jones, gave it to her on her 21st birthday in 2023. Margarita said the ring had a marguerite shape, a floral form, and that its connection to her name made it feel magical. A few weeks before that birthday, she wore the ring for the first time to the coronation of King Charles III. The place was Westminster Abbey. The date was May 6, 2023. That date carried a powerful echo. May 6th was also the date of Margaret's wedding in 1960. 63 years earlier, Margaret had entered the same church wearing the Poltimore Tiara. Now her granddaughter entered the same church wearing the ruby rose ring Antony had designed for her. Margarita said she wears the ring to events where she thinks her grandmother would want to be present. Princess Margaret's jewelry collection was scattered across the world in 2 days in June 2006. Her bathtub tiara sits somewhere in a private vault, unseen and unworn. Her turquoise jewels remain suspended between family rumor and crown silence. Her pearl necklace from Queen Mary now belongs to someone we will never know. Her Faberge clock disappeared behind another closed door. Her childhood necklace, her bee brooch, her umbrellas, and even her palace wine became trophies for strangers. But the pieces that mattered most did not vanish. The diamond flower brooches stayed with Sarah. The ruby rose ring stayed with Margarita. Those jewels did not survive because they were the most expensive. They survived because they carried the strongest memory. That is the real ending of Princess Margaret's jewels. Not everything was saved. Not everything should have been sold. Not every mystery has been answered. The Poltimore Tiara, the jewel that once made her look like a woman who had chosen her own crown, is gone from public life. The Persian Turquoise Parure remains hidden behind the old royal question of who truly owns what. But inside, the family's smaller pieces still speak. A daughter wears diamond flowers to funerals and coronations. A granddaughter wears a ruby rose to Westminster Abbey. The jewels in museum cases tell stories of rank, wealth, and power. The jewels a family keeps tell stories of grief, loyalty, and love. And love, unlike diamonds, does not need a blue leather case to survive.